Hello my friends and welcome to episode 11, the decision point. So, from here we are now on the second part of the Grand Campaign, where you can go to North Africa and continue to fight the Allies, or you can go to Barbarossa and fight the Russians. Now, as it stands, I think we've probably fought quite enough of the Allies, so in the interest of showing off something different, I think we're going to go and deal with the Russians. But of course, after this choice, you then have to decide whether you want to go north, center, or south. That's totally up to you. Now, personally, I have had a look at these various scenarios, and I've decided to go north simply because it looks to be a lot of small, compact maps, and I like that. That is my thing.
Guten Tag, Herr General. It's good to see you returning to active service. I trust you've been keeping your skills sharp in the years since our campaign in France.
Okay.
You're going to need them. Because tomorrow we will be joining in Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion the world has ever seen.
The largest invasion!
To East Prussia has already been completed. You will be formally operating under Army Group North's command. The ultimate goal is far off Leningrad, but there's a long road to take before we reach it. Taking away control of the Baltic Sea from the Soviets will be dependent on securing many river crossings and ports in the region. Your first task is to rout any Soviet forces in the vicinity of the Niemen River. Early morning Luftwaffe raids have already decimated Soviet air power.
There should be a huge amount of enemies here.
Should be a priority.
In theory.
Next objectives are these key 3 cities on this river line here. Finally, Field Marshal von Lieb requires the major port of Tallinn and the city of Pskov to be secured before further operations in the region can commence. As a final reminder, because it has been over a year since your last operation, be sure to check the equipment stocks of your troops. You wouldn't want to send them into Russia with obsolete weapons.
Right. This is a useless hero. Or relatively useless. I guess the best unit for it would be a recon car, since we might have the ability to pick off enemies and get a second turn. Hopefully, if it works that way. Right, so we're obviously massing down here for the attack. Probably got a distance of 12, probably about 6 turns travel, maybe 7 or 8 to get up here. So I'm sure this is going to be a very intense fight. Okay, so first things first, of course. Time to make repairs. I have to decide whether it's worth repairing this with veterans or not. It did take a lot of damage. What is a little bit annoying is you can't mix. Like, you can't go for a few elite replacements and a few green ones. You can't actually mix replacements. You know, maybe I don't want to totally preserve the EXP, but maybe I do want to, you know, bump in a few elites to keep it reasonable. Oh well, I might as well, because otherwise I'm going to drop a level here. The damage to this artillery is going to cost me 250. Huh. Ouch. I got it back from capturing the extra cities, the 2 extra cities at the end of the last mission. I did get it back, but it hurt me. But never mind, stuff happens. There's actually no cheap way to get around this problem. You know, I've always wondered, if you were to change this to a cheaper unit, and then do the replacements and change it back again, would you actually save money? Probably not, actually, because of the transport. I don't think you get a full refund on the transport. Yeah, it's like 520 with the transport. I always wondered. Oh look, it is going to cost me 51 to upgrade. It's actually it's built the cost of the replacements in. That's how they've worked around that. So no, you can't downgrade to a cheaper unit. Right, this plane has barely got any experience worth preserving, considering that it was beaten down to 1 life. So, unfortunately, all the experience here is going to go in the bin, but such is life. A lot of these units are actually not upgrades as well. Well, we'll talk about that. These are upgrades, definitely. So, I've already had a look at some of the gear. So these fighter upgrades are obvious upgrades. More initiative, more defense, more attack power. All the good things. But for example, this is not an upgrade if you really look at it. You get 1 extra movement, which might be marginally useful at times. You get more naval capacity and more ability to resist enemy aircraft, which is not really what you want to be doing with a dive bomber anyway. And in exchange for those bonuses, you are going to pay an extra 36 prestige, which is actually quite a lot. You do get a discount because it's the next in the line. But here's the thing. This is it's significantly more expensive, basically. It's going to cost you more in reinforcements. So, considering that I don't think we'll be dealing with any naval targets, and you're basically getting probably like a 15% price increase for effectively 1 movement. None of the stats that really matter, like soft attack, hard attack, and perhaps air defense or initiative, none of the stats that actually matter are improved. So it feels like this is a bit of a trap upgrade. I have no idea why they've got 6 ammo either. I mean, you can never run out of ammo with these things, ever. I think it's actually impossible. So anyway, I'm not upgrading them. It doesn't seem worth it. Right, let's shuffle our anti-aircraft gun back into our lineup. So as you can see, I'm loaded. I'm actually loaded. Now the real question is, how much do I want to spend on my infantry? Well, topping these guys up is a simple choice. They are almost full anyway. The bridge pirates, we don't really care about preserving veterancy on them. They are target practice for our enemies, while they serve a somewhat vital function in crossing the rivers. I won't shed any tears if they get slaughtered. And I highly doubt veterancy is going to make them any less of target practice for the enemy. So the real decision comes to these two. This one's not got enough EXP to actually matter just yet, but it's getting there. But it's 146 if I want that. And this one is has a pretty solid amount of EXP. Like, we're really actually starting to get somewhere now. But we did take some horrendous casualties. So between the two of them, I'm looking at a cost of like 400 prestige. Is it worth it? I would say that it is. We can also take the opportunity to add a transport to this. I have no idea why you would go for the upgraded transports. I mean, I appreciate the fact that the upgraded transports mean that your infantry are going to be tougher if they get caught in their transports. But that's not a mistake that you should ever allow yourself to make, to be fair. Right, and that leaves us with 5 core slots to play with. And 1,400 prestige, which is a vast quantity of prestige. I also don't know if I should move my double support guy back to my artillery. Now I'm redeploying both of my anti-aircraft guns. Apparently the Russian Air Force has been devastated, so we might not have many aircraft to deal with. I think as the battles are getting bigger and more distant as well, I think we might need to start putting the hexes on. In fact, we'll just put them on properly. This is going to make it easier for me to actually measure the distances. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 25, like, and maybe 35 up to here. So probably about 8 to 10 turns of cautious movement. I must admit that the hexes do look quite ugly. They actually really do look quite ugly. Let's just leave them on really vague. You can just sort of barely make them out. Okay, right. Now we need to deploy. I've never actually even so much as looked at this mission, so I'd almost be tempted to just have this as an episode talking about decision making in terms of deployment. Oh, we're not actually done yet because we've got tanks to look at. The glorious Flam Waffler is here at long last. It is slightly inferior statistically to your standard tank, but it has the ignore entrenchment feature, which is just glorious for extracting enemy infantry out of cities. We also have some tanks around that are superior anti-armor units. And this is kind of where we start to diverge our tanks. So basically, 3H's are, I think, where it's at. Or is it the 4F? I actually think the 4F is probably a better choice. This is a better... The 3H is a better tank killer, just barely. And it's cheaper. But the F retains its ability to hose infantry. And it's actually pretty significant. How much do these cost me? 4Ds. So the 4D is 270. So I want to buy some flam wafflers. That's what I'm calling them. So I can actually start pushing enemy infantry out of cities more directly. Since I never found a hero that gives you the ignores entrenchment trait. If I'd have found a hero that gave me the ignores entrenchment trait, then I could just go for these. Okay, so at 270, this is the exact same price. For the more superior against tanks tank. And then obviously for 40 prestige we can go for this one, which is the more superior against, well, retaining your effectiveness against infantry version. So I think we'll go with the anti-tank tank. Cost is something that we do want to consider. And then we can add a the Flame Panzer for hosing infantry out of cities. It's quite cheap too at 230. Very inexpensive way to remove infantry from towns. Now the question is, do we want to overstrength some stuff? That is an option we have. Or I could put the old boat people away and get another flam waffler for once again hosing infantry out of their hidey hose. If we look here, we have like one river here. We have a river here, but there's loads of cities on it, and this swamp makes bridging not effective. Plus I haven't got transports anyway for my boat pioneers. So basically we're only going to use the boat pioneers to ford this river. We're not going to use it for this because we've got to assault here anyway. And that cannot be forded. And this is a bridge here and a bridge here and like a bridge here. So there's no scope. There's actually no scope to push here with boat pioneers. So let's fold that into our reserve. There we go. And that actually gives us room to buy another barbecue panzer. War crimes machine. Alright, let's give our war crimes machine some appropriate decorations so that we know that it is ready for war crimes. Something strikingly red would be nice. Go with some British camo patterns, that'll confuse the enemy. Huh, so many interesting designs. There's a rainbow stripe actually Oh, I love it. It's like that pyro joke from Team Fortress 2, you know, the one where he's horribly burning people and he's horribly burning people, but to him it looks like sunshine, rainbows and candy. We'll I'll never mistake them with this design. I really shouldn't, should I? There's serious serious wargaming going on here. Let's do it. Okay. Is that everything? I think that's everything. I thought I'd overstrengthed 2 fighters. I guess not. I know we haven't looked at this before, but basically you get these awards, but they're pretty difficult to actually farm. You have to kill like 100 points of enemy units to get +1. That's actually a lot. This survivor thing feels like it would kick in right when you needed it. Survive 5 attacks in a single turn. Both attacks initiated by the enemy and counterattacks are counted. Don't know if support fire is counted though. Then again, if you're taking horrendous damage on a unit, you've probably done something really wrong. It's like anti-infantry veteran do 200 points of enemy infantry damage. Well, that's just not going to happen. Some of the requirements are really very high. You know, when you factor in the unit, they seem to be quite generic. So, you know, on this, it's more likely to make sense that we could get, you know, 100 points of infantry strength or whatever. Although it looks like they want 200 here. So I guess there is some consideration, but it's still very, very... Oh no, here it says 200 points. For level 1. It's kind of confusing, isn't it? I guess it's always 200 points. I guess it's 200 points for every single unit in the game. It's 100 points for air attack, of course. It's just kind of silly because certain units will never ever get anywhere near that kind of amount. Recon might get there eventually, but, you know, tanks and infantry will see it one day. I wouldn't be surprised if some of my infantry are getting close. 40 and 3, is that really all you've done? That feels wrong. But maybe I've concentrated a lot of damage on this. Yeah, 147. This has been a much more effective unit. Urban Legend, +1 to close defense. Fight in 50 close combats. Interesting. If you're playing without turns, then there's lots of opportunity to actually farm these. And what I mean by that is, Jesus, that's a lot of people they've killed. Those missions with the French Maginot Line, there's loads of bunkers and stuff that you could realistically farm for kills all day long. I'm surprised the monster artillery doesn't have any awards yet. Actually, it must be close. No, I've only destroyed 27 points of tanks with it. 80 points of infantry strength. +10 accuracy when providing support fire. That's quite cool. Huh. I guess I'm overselling how much damage it's done, but I presume that these have done a lot less. I mean, it is mostly there for suppression, to be fair. It's kind of funny, in realistic terms there, my artillery is actually not the unit getting the majority of my kills. It's actually my tanks or my infantry. Okay. Let's I think this is like the tenacious defense or whatever, isn't it? Oh right, yeah. Speaking of which, the old war crimes machine, does it actually have a high close defense? No. It still has a 0 close defense. So it's still potentially going to take nasty return fire when attacking infantry in cities. But it has ludicrously high initiative, so as long as you've used the artillery to suppress them a little bit, I think you should be good to go. Right, so let's move on to the deployment. So I had like 26 minutes just talking about deployment. I think this is going to become a little bit of a video on deployment, so I'll make a note in the description now that this is just going to be a video about deployment. So you've never been on a mission before. How do you deploy? What I do is I typically run my infantry on the front line in a way that they establish zone of control for me. I'm always concerned about really forward exposed positions like this. So I always position such that I can get out if I need to. Like here and here. Then I put recons on the front line. Wherever it makes most sense to do so. Oh, where's my other recon? Because you get the first turn. So you can use your recons to have a look at what's going on. Next is the artillery. Obviously you want to position this in such a way that it defends your units. Typically, my 2 anti-soft, anti-hard artillery will fit somewhere reasonably on the front line, but not actually on the front line. And then the old siege cannon will be placed in such a way as it's the nearest city, because this artillery is there to punch holes in enemy cities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want it positioned somewhere where it can attack, if possible, where it can attack the nearest city or the nearest objective on the first turn. So we can see here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, in order to meet that criteria, I would actually have to position it on the front line, which is fine. We get the first turn, so it's not the biggest deal. If we have to evacuate, we have to evacuate. Now, the reason why I start with the infantry on the front line is because they are they're slow, but I will always course correct if I encounter a situation like this where I can't realistically reach the first objective. Right. Once again, the barbecue tanks are there to barbecue my enemies. They should be positioned where they can gain access to cities, which would be these 3 to begin with. Don't know about how much we're going to touch these 2. Everything else can just be placed wherever. We put our bridge pirates here so that they can push forward and create a walkway here if I need it. I've noticed that none of these cities are actually supply cities, so we should be able to encircle them if we need to. Actually, it looks like they don't have any supply at all. I don't see a supply hex anywhere on this map. So encirclements are going to be real in this. Okay, next thing, the deployment of the Air Force. You should position your fighters so that they protect your bombers. You should also consider where your next airfield is. Here, I think, is the actually only next airfield. There's one here too. So the enemy is likely to be here and here. There's a dirt one here as well. Okay. So that means that fighters are going to come in this way and this way, right? So we want to position our fighters such that we can intercept them. Then position our bombers such that they are protected. And the strat bomber can just go at the back because it's got massive range. Oh, I didn't fully replace it for some reason. Did I actually... I didn't do the reinforcements on it either, funnily enough. That was a funny oversight there. Okay. Oh! These forward airfields are both dirt. So the strat bomber has to be placed right at the back. That's a standard airfield, and so is that. Okay, so our need to capture this standard airfield is greatly increased because we require it for the strat bomber. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, all of these towns are in striking distance of my dive bombers if this airfield is acquired. That makes this airfield a huge priority target for me. No problem. The final phase of deployment, when I'm considering my deployment, a lot of this I do off camera normally. I plan all this out and then I come to you guys with the plan. But in a change of pace for this episode, I'm really sort of going through every thought about my first time deployment, looking at a mission. So obviously the next thing is to bring the anti-aircraft guns to the fore. They should be positioned in such a way that they protect all of your units and that they also protect each other. We don't need to protect this recon car because it's going to move. So here is probably best. We've got a range of 4 on these. 3. Okay, 3. 1, 2, 3. Mostly everything is protected. The all-important artillery is protected. 1, 2, 3, and they just about protect each other. My first thought would be that these will move one space to the right, or maybe several spaces to the right after the first turn. Okay, that's our deployment complete. So, we've selected Barbarossa, we're going to crush the Russians. But what I'll do is, I'll just compartmentalize this into one episode. So if you watched all of this and you found it interesting, I'm very pleased that you found it interesting. But I'll put a warning on this one, just saying that this is about my thought process for deployment. And we'll actually get into the combat next time. So that people who are not interested in the thought process behind deployment can just skip this episode. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you deep insight into how I first approach a map. Now, obviously, when you learn the maps, you know, I mean, I have no clue, but maybe there's nothing here at all. Then this is a great idea, and I can just run up here and grab these. Maybe there's a huge pile of tanks here that's waiting to push in. I don't know. So in that case, you know, you come to understand that. You might decide that this big anti-tank artillery, you might want to put double support back on it if you've got that hero, which I have. Position it here and position your tanks here and, you know, get well involved. Or you might want to deploy an anti-tank or a friggin... I think I have the Dicker Max available, actually. Funnily enough, the Dicker Max is available. It's actually a really nasty anti-tank device with massive initiative, massive defense, and massive anti-tank. And it provides AT support. It's actually probably the best weapon I have in terms of mobile anti-tank. It's not cheap though. it's very pricey. 370. You know, if there's a horde of tanks here, then you might want to deploy a load of anti-tank. But I don't know, so I'm just going to deploy what I have based on the idea of what is a good general all-round deployment. And I think on this difficulty level, you probably do have to practice now. You do have to actually play the map in practice and actually, you know, work out what's going on with it and all that kind of thing and approach it that way. You know, I think this difficulty level was very much designed for someone who has played the game on medium or hard and then wants further challenge and is now back and thus would know where everything is because they don't change the maps or anything based on the difficulty. It'll be the exact same deployment every time. But yeah, I don't know. So I'm deploying generally like this. And then what I'll end up doing is I'll end up actually just looking at the map and practicing a little bit and putting together a strategy. And this deployment might change a little bit. But if you're just playing on normal difficulty or whatever, this approach to deployment is totally fine and will get you very, very, very far. Will help you finish the game. You can then tailor your deployments to the map after beating the game once, and that's going to make you a much better player, or it's going to make you much better at beating specific maps. But of course, if you're playing the new free-for-all mode, the new like multiplayer and all that kind of thing. If you're playing those modes, you're going to have no idea what the enemy has deployed or not deployed. And so this approach is the only approach that you can use. You need to understand this general approach to deployment because that's going to actually serve you well in a multiplayer environment by having no weaknesses and being deployed and ready to go like this. Presuming that you're the attacker, of course. Some of the free-for-all modes are just kind of like everyone's the attacker and the defender and everyone's fighting for everything, so there's a lot to think about there in that kind of deployment, but this will serve you well either way. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you weren't, you know, those of you watching this weren't disappointed with an action-free episode, but actually this seemed like a really good opportunity to sit down and actually talk about deployment at the start of the Russian campaign. We have successfully completed the first part of the grand campaign, and this is the second. And this is a good opportunity as well because obviously technology has changed. We are, you know, we're at a transition point here where we've been given a bit of extra money to actually sit down and buy whatever we want and deploy whatever we like. So yeah, that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed this special episode, but if you didn't, there'll be a full combat episode next time anyway, but this is an important topic, and I did want to cover it. So, that is it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.